Good morning from Osterley Garden Centre, where it is Christmas, which is amazing. Amelia's had enough. She's off. We thought, oh, she really like this. She comes in and she's like, no thanks, bye.
Welcome to another episode of Toby Stupid Vlog.
Hello, happy Sunday. It's been a wet sort of 36 hours, and yesterday we went just shopping basically. We went to garden centre because, the thing with garden centre is sometimes you get really good food, but actually that garden centre has really, really good Christmas shenanigans, as you saw. And then we went to a giant Asda in Hounslow, which was excellent. I know, get excited by strange things when you reach my age. And today it's been like really miserable all morning, so we've just stayed in and watched the Grand Prix, which was historic. Watching Lewis Hamilton win his 7th title is kind of amazing. Like, I remember watching him win his 2nd title on repeat because I was filming in 2014 on the last race of the season, and I had to go in and turn my phone off, and I didn't know what the result was, and it was killing me, and I had to take a deep breath when I came out and turn my phone on. This time I actually got to see it, and in fact I've seen most of the races for most of the seasons since then, and obviously having worked on a few F1 races for the BBC, so that was really good, really joyous. And it was supposed to be crap all day, but look, it ain't crap. So once we've had lunch, maybe we might brave the outdoors and see what happens. That's nice, isn't it? It's just where we were. It's literally coming down on that tree. Some advantages in terrible weather. You see the second tree? Yeah. Right, now is as good a time as any to give my thoughts on lockdown 2. Lockdownier. It's not. It's barely a lockdown. And as is often the case, the original is much better than the sequel. The original had real effect really quickly because everything was genuinely closed. And those people who wanted to do exercise and go out had empty roads and empty parks, and it was lovely. Whereas lockdown 2, basically they've just closed shops that sell clothes, and restaurants you can't eat in. That's, as far as I can tell, that's it. I mean, it's just not, to all intents and purposes, nothing else has changed. And I know there's a very long and complicated law, and I've read through it, and I know what the instructions are, but the exemptions are so endless that it means that basically, as I mentioned, the only thing that really changed is, well, you can't meet up with groups of people, but that doesn't stop basically everyone going out. Just you can't meet up. And clothes and restaurants, retailers are closed. Disappointing is what I'd say. Time will tell how much effect it has, hopefully enough. But at the moment, I much prefer the original. This week's Park Like a Dickhead award goes to this silver Lexus, who's left 2 metres at the front. Some people are just absolutely massive bellends when it comes to parking. Like, learn how to park your car, or buy a car that you can park. Everyone else shouldn't have to pick up the pieces for your fucking inadequacy. Get a grip. Good morning. Just dropped Amelia off at nursery. I wonder if it'll ever feel normal. And by that I mean, it's slightly weird leaving your child with, someone you don't really know. I mean, they're not complete strangers, but you don't know them. And it's just a slightly weird feeling, and she seems perfectly happy, and when you pick her up in the evening, she seems perfectly happy. But it is an odd feeling, there's no doubt about it. And I think made worse by the fact that obviously Amelia, until she went to nursery, hadn't spent much time with anyone apart from us, because of the whole COVID situation. But she does like other people, so she's not too bad really. But at some point presumably this will feel a bit more normal, and you know, it's only another 17 years of this until you get to university age. But there is also something very relaxing about getting home after you've dropped her off, especially on a nice day like today, thinking you've got no interruptions and you can actually really get to grips with some work. So it's a weird trade-off. As I've said before, I'm sure it's a weird mishmash of emotions. It is a very mild day today, quite exceptionally so for November. And I'm about to go and do something that I haven't done for 7.5 months, despite the fact I used to do it almost daily at one point. Such is the nature of COVID, and that is get public transport. I'm still very apprehensive about getting on a bus, if I'm honest, so I'm not doing that. I'm going to get on the tube with a mask and some hand gel. And I'm not going to touch anything or anybody, which is a good rule at the best of times. I've decided what I'm going to call Lockdown 2. I think it should be known as Lockdowny Junior. Because, because it sounds silly, but also because this is a significantly inferior lockdown to the first one. So it's really only the junior version. There is no less cars on the road. There are a lot of people working from home, but they should have been doing that anyway. It's just businesses hadn't had a kick up the arse. And there's very, very few establishments that are really closed. Now, obviously the ones that are closed are going to suffer, and it's no less of an impact for them, but for us as a whole, it's not dramatically different. You need a legal reason to leave your house, which is kind of crazy. But in practical terms, it's not very different to normality, apart from the hugging and meeting your family and seeing people, which you might think is quite a big deal. But in terms of normal everyday life and work, it's not massively impacted. Hi there, happy Wednesday. Forgive the planes. We don't usually have them anymore, but typically, as soon as I get the camera out, you might be able to see from the mistiness, it's actually raining. It's the first time I've had to do a nursery pickup in these conditions. It's outrageous. This is the time of year when you listen to me moan about the fact that I'm working on a parade documentary and it's really hard. Anyway, so I'm working on a parade documentary and it's really hard. The difficulty about it is the same thing that's always difficult about it, which is lots and lots of disparate footage that's hard to get together and a really, really short time frame in which to finish it. I know, woe is me. You know, I have a job when I work my own hours and it's really tough that I have to do work. I'm not looking for sympathy. I just have to express myself because then I feel better about the situation that I'm in. This is for my own therapy. Anyway, so I have been today because of that, actually in an office doing work, which is very unusual and allowed technically under the rules of lockdown, but not something I'm very keen to do again. And having taken public transport for the first time in 7.5 months, don't imagine I'm going to do that again soon either. Both passable experiences, neither better than neither as good as I'd hoped, let's say. So there we are, that's what's been happening in my life. Apologies for the rain and the light on the lens. It's all very challenging lighting conditions. Anyway, I'm gonna go pick up Amelia, that'll be nice, and then she can have 2 hours of destroying the flat again. Good evening. It is 5. No, not quite 5. That's when I'm picking up Amelia. It's, let's say, 4:45. And I've left the house for the first time today. First of all, Christmas lights, quite exciting, and that comes from someone who gets very angry usually when Christmas comes too early, but this year it can't come early enough. Yes, I've been indoors all day working on the Parade documentary. I warned you that I was going to occupy what I'm rambling about for the next week or so, because the deadline's been extended. It was supposed to be this evening, which would have been tough. Understatement alert. But it's now Tuesday evening, which is still tough, but very much more achievable when we think about how we've gone today. Today's been hugely productive. Now, the weird thing about Parade documentaries, and I don't get this with any other documentary style programs I work on, is it's an absolute roller coaster of emotions. And the reason being is because it's not done in the conventional manner, which is production team decide narrative, control what is put in and content, decide what to refilm, reshoot, full editorial control, because you pitched and you won the commission. Right, that's not how these work. How they work is we come up with an idea that we hope that they'll like. They agree the broad terms. We do a first draft, although ever doing too much work on the first draft is a fool's errand, because then it gets absolutely destroyed, torn to shreds, and you get told something slightly different for what they actually want. But because they're not TV people, to be fair, they don't really know what they want until they see what they don't want. So that's why your first draft you don't want to spend too much time on. It's really a steering document. And then, so there's a lot of, excitement as you put together the first bit, because it's your product, and with all creative processes, you're very proud of what you've done usually. And then it gets torn to bits and you feel like crap for a whole day. They're like, what was the point of all that, blah, 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 blah. Then you start building it back up again, which is what we're doing now. Now, this will be 3 days of proper build up to the actual real programme. And then it'll get one more look, briefly, about 24 hours before delivery, where there'll be several demands made, most of which will be impossible. We'll do the best we can, and then it'll be delivered. And that's what happened. So we'll have another low, and then it'll be delivered, and then we'll have an elation, a high of having finished. And that's what happens every year. And I've forgotten, because I hadn't had to film any of it this year. But that's the normal process, and it is completely and utterly exhausting in a way that you can't even begin to imagine. You end up emotionally destitute at the end of it. And then you do it all over again next year, hooray! But there's no actual parade this year, so I won't, on the 2nd and 3rd of January, be having to sift through 3.5 hours of content to try and make a highlights video at least. So, it'll be onwards and upwards whilst this is done. We are making a programme for the first, and that's a bit more effort, but I'm not actually involved with the making of it until the edit has to happen. So, up and downs this week, then a breather for a couple of weeks, then more up and downs in December, and then I won't speak about Parade again for at least 8 months.